She never saw it coming. She trusted him. She loved him. He was her father, but that night, he destroyed everything. 2 nights before the full moon, Adana sat by the river, braiding her long, thick hair. The moon's reflection danced in the water, and the soft wind whispered secrets through the trees. Her father, Chief Odafe, stood behind her, watching. Adana, he said, his deep voice breaking the silence. She turned and smiled. Yes, Baba? But he didn't smile back. His face was hard. Cold. Tomorrow, you will marry King Jerome of the neighboring village. Adana's hands froze. She laughed nervously. Baba, you are joking, right? He did not blink. Her heart pounded. But Baba, I don't even know him. I don't love him. Chief Odafe looked away. This is bigger than love. Adana felt sick. But Baba, you promised. You said I would marry someone I choose. The chief's jaw tightened. Plans have changed. Adana stood up, shaking. No, I will not marry a stranger. Chief Odafe stepped closer. His eyes darkened, and then he raised his hand, slap. Adana fell to the ground. Tears filled her eyes. Baba, how could you? His voice was cold as stone. You will do as I say. And then he walked away, leaving her broken, leaving her alone. She sat there, holding her burning cheek, staring at the river. The water whispered. The wind howled. And then she heard it, a voice, from deep inside the forest, calling her name, Adana. Come to me. Her breath caught. She turned, but no one was there. Then she heard it again. Come. Before it is too late. And deep in her heart, she knew nothing would ever be the same again. Adana's heart pounded. The voice was calling her, from the forest. She looked back toward the village. The lights. The people. The life she had always known. Then she looked at the trees. Dark. Silent. Waiting. Something inside her whispered, go. So she wiped her tears, took a deep breath, and stepped into the shadows. Whoosh, the trees closed behind her. She was inside. The forest was alive. Owls hooted. Leaves rustled. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth. Then, crack, a branch snapped behind her. Adana froze. She wasn't alone. She turned slowly and gasped. A woman stood before her. Tall, dark, beautiful. Her eyes glowed like the moon. Her hair flowed like river water, and her skin was covered in moving patterns, shifting like the wind. Adana stepped back. Who are you? The woman smiled. I am Olama, keeper of forgotten daughters. Adana's breath caught. Forgotten daughters? Olama's eyes gleamed. Girls like you. Girls whose fathers have betrayed them. Adana's heart twisted. She clenched her fists. My father. He sold me. He lied to me. Olama nodded slowly. Yes. And now you must decide. Will you accept his fate for you? Or will you write your own? Adana's body trembled. What do you mean? Olama leaned in, her voice like the wind. I can give you power. Adana stared. Olama lifted her hand. Whoosh, golden dust swirled around them. Adana felt something stir inside her. A fire. A strength. A voice inside her whispered yes. But then, she saw something in Olama's eyes. Something dark. Something dangerous. Adana swallowed hard. Olama smiled wider. Say the word, and I will make you unstoppable. Adana's hands shook. Her father had betrayed her. Her whole life was falling apart, but deep inside, something didn't feel right. Then, a sound broke the silence. A deep, guttural growl. Adana's eyes snapped to the trees. Something was coming, something huge, and in that moment she realized. She had just stepped into something far more dangerous than she ever imagined. Growl. The sound shook the trees. Adana's body froze. Her heart thundered. Something was coming. Something big. She turned to Olama. What is that? Olama's glowing eyes did not blink. She whispered, your test. Whoosh, the trees rippled like water. Then, boom, the ground shook as a giant creature stepped into the clearing. Adana's breath caught. It was a beast. Not an animal. Not a man. Something in between. Its eyes burned red. Its skin was dark as midnight. And its voice. It spoke. Adana. You do not belong here. Her blood ran cold. Olama's voice was soft. If you wish for power, you must prove your worth. Adana shook her head. No. I don't want this. Olama tilted her head. Are you sure? Adana's hands trembled. She looked at the beast. It was waiting, watching. One wrong move, and she was dead. Then a wind blew, and she heard another voice, soft, familiar, Adana. Run. Her mother's voice. Adana's eyes widened. Her mother had died years ago, yet she could hear her clear as day. Run. And so, Adana turned and bolted. The beast roared, boom, boom, boom. Its giant footsteps shook the earth as it chased her. Branches whipped her face. The forest blurred around her. Her legs burned. Her breath came in short gasps. But she did not stop. She could not stop. Then, she saw it. A river, wide, raging, deep. She skidded to a stop. The beast was behind her, trapped. Her chest heaved. Her mind screamed, jump. But before she could, a hand grabbed her wrist. She spun around, and what she saw made her blood run cold. It was her father, Chief Odave, standing by the river, holding her wrist. His eyes were wild, and his voice shaking. Adana. Come home. Adana's heart stopped. Her father? Here? Why? Her mind swirled. She had two choices: jump into the unknown, or trust a man who betrayed her. And in that moment, she realized this was not the end. It was just the beginning. Adana's wrist burned under her father's grip. She stared at him, her breath shaking. Come home? She whispered. After what you did to me? Chief Odave's face was hard, unreadable. But his fingers trembled. Behind them, boom, the beast took a step forward, its red eyes burning into Adana's back. Time was running out. She had two choices: run with the father who betrayed her, or take a leap of faith into the unknown waters. Adana's heart pounded. Her father tightened his grip. You don't understand, Adana. There is more to this than you know. Adana snatched her arm away. Then tell me the truth, she yelled. What aren't you telling me? Chief Odave's jaw locked. He looked at the beast, then back at her. Then he whispered, that thing is not your enemy. Adana's stomach dropped. What? She turned slowly to face the creature. It stood still, watching. The rage in its eyes was gone. For the first time, Adana noticed something. Its face. The sharp features. The familiar shape of its nose, its brow, its jawline. It looked like her. Like her mother. Her breath caught. No, it can't be. Her father's voice was low. She never left us, Adana. Adana's legs shook. You're lying. His eyes were sad. You know I'm not. The beast took a step forward. Adana did not move. It lowered its head and whispered, my child. Adana's knees buckled. Her mother. All this time, she had thought she was dead. But no, she had been turned into this. She looked at her father, tears in her eyes. "What did you do?" Chief Odev's voice broke. "I had no choice." Adana shook her head. "You betrayed me. You betrayed her." Her father's eyes darkened. "If I hadn't, you would have been next." Adana's heart stopped. Next for what? Then the sky rumbled, the ground shook, and from the depths of the forest a new voice echoed, "It is time." Adana turned, and what she saw made her blood run cold. Something far worse was coming, and this time, there was no escape. The air turned heavy, Adana's skin prickled. The voice had come from the shadows, deep, cold, ancient. Her father stiffened. The beast, her mother, lowered her head. Adana swallowed hard. Then, from the darkness, they appeared. The elders, tall, hooded, powerful. They moved without footsteps. Their eyes glowed silver. And when they spoke, their voices echoed through the wind. "Chief Odeif. The time has come." Adana felt sick. Her father clenched his fists. "No," the elders tilted their heads. "You made a vow." Adana's mind spun. "What vow?" Her father's face darkened. He turned to her. His lips parted. But before he could speak, whoosh, a blast of wind knocked them all back. Adana hit the ground, gasping. Dust swirled. The trees bent, and through the chaos, she saw them reaching for her mother. The beast. Her mother roared. She thrashed, claws scraping the earth. "Leave her alone." Adana screamed. She tried to run, but hands grabbed her. She turned. Her father was holding her back. Tears streamed down his face. "Adana," he whispered. "Forgive me." Then, crack, a blinding light exploded, and before Adana's eyes, her mother vanished, gone. The forest fell silent. The elders lowered their hands. Then, without a word, they disappeared, leaving only dust. Adana stared. Her hands shook. Her breath came in shallow gasps. She turned to her father, her body trembling with rage. "What did you do?" Chief Ode fell to his knees. His voice broke. "I just saved you." Adana's chest burned. Her mother was gone, and the man who caused it was kneeling before her. She looked down at him, tears blurring her vision, and deep inside her, something changed, something dark, something dangerous. And in that moment, Adana made a vow stronger than blood, a vow that would shake the gods. And she whispered, "No, father. You just made your worst mistake." The wind howled. Adana's heart pounded. Her mother was gone. The elders had taken her, and her father, the man she had once trusted, was on his knees, whispering, "I just saved you." But Adana's chest burned. Rage, pain, betrayal. Her hands curled into fists. The trees seemed to tremble with her fury. Then boom, a shockwave burst from her body. Her father flinched. The air crackled. For the first time in her life, she felt power. Real, raw, ancient power. Her father's eyes widened. "No," he whispered. "Adana, listen to me." She stepped forward. Her voice was low. "Dangerous. Where did they take her?" Chief Odeif's lips parted. But before he could answer, a new voice sliced through the silence. The Underworld. Adana spun around. A figure stood in the shadows, tall, cloaked, watching. Adana's breath caught. She knew that voice, from the stories, from the warnings. It was him, the Gatekeeper. Her father's body tensed. "Leave us," he said, his voice shaking. The Gatekeeper chuckled. "I cannot." His silver eyes locked onto Adana. "You seek the truth?" Adana's throat tightened. Her mother was trapped in the Underworld, and now, the only way to save her was to face the gods themselves. But was she ready? The gatekeeper smiled and whispered, "Come, child. The gods are waiting." Adana's fingers twitched. She had a choice: to follow him, or to stay with the man who had already betrayed her once. Her father grabbed her wrist. His voice was urgent. "Adana, if you go with him, there is no coming back." Her pulse pounded. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "Run." Adana took a breath. Her choice was made. She turned and stepped into the darkness, toward the underworld, toward the gods, toward her destiny. Adana stepped into the darkness. The gatekeeper's cloak billowed as he led her forward. Her father's voice echoed behind her. "Adana, don't do this." She didn't turn back. Her mother was trapped in the underworld, and she was going to bring her home. The wind shifted. The trees vanished. The ground beneath her melted into shadows. Then, boom, a blinding light flashed. When Adana opened her eyes, she was somewhere else. Somewhere cold. Somewhere forbidden. The underworld. Dark mountains rose into the sky. The rivers flowed black, and in the distance Adana saw them, the elders, standing before a golden cage. Inside, her mother. Adana's heart lurched. She ran forward, but the gatekeeper blocked her path. "Careful, child." His silver eyes gleamed. "You are not welcome here." Adana's fingers curled into fists. She turned to the elders. "Let her go." The elders tilted their heads. Then one of them spoke. "She is here because of a debt." Adana froze. "Debt?" Her father's words rang in her ears. "I had no choice." Her mother had not been taken. She had been given, traded for something, sacrificed. Her throat tightened. "What did my father do?" The elders raised their hands. A vision flashed before her eyes. Her father, kneeling before them, begging, pleading, offering his own wife in exchange for power, and the elders had accepted. Adana staggered back. Her own father had betrayed her mother, and lied. The rage inside her exploded. The ground cracked. The air rippled, and for the first time, Adana felt her true power awaken. The gatekeeper narrowed his eyes. "Interesting." The elders stepped back. The golden cage shook. Adana's mother lifted her head. Her voice was weak. "Adana." Adana took a deep breath, and with one scream, she shattered the cage. Her mother fell forward. Adana caught her. Tears streamed down her face. "I have you, Mama." The elders raised their hands, but the gatekeeper held up his own. "Enough." The air froze. The gatekeeper smiled. "She is stronger than you thought." The elders said nothing. The shadows whispered. Then, just like that, they vanished. Adana turned to the gatekeeper. "Why did you help me?" He chuckled. "Because I know what's coming next." Adana frowned. "What do you mean?" The gatekeeper's silver eyes glowed. He leaned in and whispered, "Your father is waiting." Adana's stomach dropped. She turned, and there, standing at the edge of the underworld, was Chief Odafe. His face dark, his hands trembling, and in his eyes, a secret even more dangerous than the one before.